Today on Home Theater Fanatics, we're going to take a look at the 8600 series speakers from Atlantic Technology. Welcome back, Fanatics. Like I said, today we're going to take a look at the 8600 series speakers from Atlantic Technology. And here to help me today is Gabe from Echo Home Theater. Hey man.
Hi everybody. Good.
So Gabe is actually going to be on the live stream as well. So I'm going to put a link up so you can check that out when that happens. And he's going to be able to talk all about these because he is the expert when it comes to this line and brand of speakers. Now, you've had these in your home for quite a while, right?
Yeah, so they released in December of last year. I've had them since that point, and they are impressive. One of the most impressive speakers that I've had the pleasure to just play around with and audition for sure.
Absolutely. And you know, I'll give you a little sneak peek to the end, and you should stick to the end because I'm going to show you some measurements and all that kind of stuff. But these things sound really good. And you know, for the last hour or so, we've just been sitting here. We've been watching movie clips. We've been listening to 2-channel music, and I am just shocked by the quality that you get out of these speakers. It's really, really next level kind of stuff. It's really, really good. Now, I think before we go any further though, we should really take a look at the specs of these speakers so you kind of understand what's going on. So now let's go ahead and pull these out of the box so you can see what that experience is like. And I'll also tell you what the specs are for each of the different pieces. Let's kick off the specifications with the 8600 ELR towers. These towers clock in at $5,700 for a pair, so they're not cheap, but they're not super crazy expensive. But they pack a lot of guts. So these are sealed, they're a 3-way design, and they sport 4 8-inch subs, right? Yeah, so maybe you call it a mid-bass driver, but it's got 4 of them. 2 5.25-inch mid-range drivers, and 1 1-inch aluminum magnesium tweeter. The frequency response is 50 Hz to 25,000 Hz, if you can hear that high, and it's a 6-ohm speaker. The mids and tweets come in a MTM to Apolito array, and the crossover gets pretty darn fancy. I'm going to read this off. It's a 4th order Butterworth asymmetrical time-aligned Linkwitz-Riley design with bi-wire inputs. Additional features that set this apart from other towers include a 3-position high-frequency energy switch. This switch is designed to allow the tweeter to be customized to how live your room is, you know, depending on whether you have any absorption, you know, if your room's damped or not. So you can play with this and see if you can hear any difference there. It's very subtle, but it's there. There's a location selector switch that is designed to allow you to compensate for placement of this speaker behind a perforated screen, so an AT screen, and a boundary compensation control. This tweaks out the low or mid-range in case you place this in a cabinet or really close to a TV or really close to a wall. Moving on to the center channel, the 8600 EC. Now, this is very similar to its larger tower brother, and it's got all the same features, you know, with all the cool switches on the back. But the layout of this speaker is pretty interesting. So it's got 4 6.5-inch mid-bass drivers, 2 5.25-inch mid-range drivers, and a 1-inch silk dome tweeter. Now, this is different than the aluminum magnesium tweeter in the towers. You know, and I was concerned that there might be some type of tonal difference, you know, as you have sounds kind of pan across that front soundstage, but I couldn't pick up on any of that at all. It sounds really great to me. The frequency response is exactly the same as the tower, 50 to 25 kilohertz, and it's also a 6-ohm speaker. It's slightly more sensitive at 93 decibels as opposed to 91 on the towers. But the thing that really leaps out about this center channel is that it is just humongous. I mean, this thing is massively huge. It's 37.6 inches by 13.7 by 14.5. That's really, really big, and it weighs 91.5 pounds. Yeah, this is gosh, I think the largest center channel that I've ever installed before, you know, full stop. It is by far the biggest. It sounds great. It's wonderful. It comes with a little base that you sit the speaker on, and it allows you to customize the tilt of the speaker, so you can point it up or point it down, and it kind of slides around on that base, but it sticks really well. It's not loose, and you know, that's a very thoughtful design for this center channel. Other than the great sound, really the size of this thing just packs a wallop. I mean, that's the take home. And I think there will be challenges for a number of folks out there that are looking to install this under a television, because you've never had to install anything this big under a TV before. It's pretty crazy. On surround sound duty, we've got the 8200 ESR. Now these are cool because they're sealed and they can operate as either dipole or bipoles. There's a little switch on the back to switch between the two different modes. They're two-way, and they have two 5.25 inch speakers and two 1-inch silk dome tweeters. Frequency response is 80 to 20,000 hertz, and they're 6 ohm speakers. Adding to the coolness level of the speakers, they also include a set of pedestals that are specifically designed for these speakers. They look really good when you put those pedestals together and put it all together as one unit. It's very slick. On subwoofer duty, we've got the SBT 1000 subwoofer. This subwoofer features two 12-inch long-throw composite cone woofers. They're both active with 1,000 watts RMS. Frequency response depends on the setting that you choose on the back of the sub. So there's a max SPL setting, or you can flip it over to max range setting. So if you have it set on max range, the frequency response is digging all the way down to 20 hertz. However, if you have it set for max SPL, it only digs down to 27 hertz. From what I can see, there's not a problem with the SPL coming out of this sub, so I elected to run this in the max range setting because it got plenty loud for me. On the rear of the box, you'll find both XLR and RCA inputs, a phase invert switch, knobs for crossover frequency and volume, and there's the power switch that lets you choose on, off, or standby. A couple of other things to call out. The subwoofer comes in black or shiny black, but the towers in the center channel can come in the same shiny black or a cool wood grain, and the wood grain looks really, really good. I've seen that up close and personal, and I prefer it over the black color, but that's personal preference. Pretty cool gear, right? Yeah, I mean, those things are stunning, and the packaging was great. I really enjoyed unboxing it, and the center channel in particular is a pretty big beast. I mean, it's a monster, but I was able to get all that stuff out of the box, pulled into the room, and I've installed this as a 5.1 system. So can you talk a little bit about what you get in a 5.1 system, so folks that don't really understand what that terminology is?
Sure.
So they know what that really is?
So the original discrete multi-channel surround was a 5-channel stereo mix. So you're talking about a left and right that you'd normally use for stereo applications.
And in this scenario, that'd be the 8600 series towers.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you'd have a center channel that holds, in most cases, about 60 to 70% of what's coming from the front of the room. It anchors dialogue, it helps bridge the gap between the left and the right speakers, and gives you a nice ability to have music and sound pan across the front of the room. Then you would have two surround speakers. Mm-hmm. You would have something that's a left surround and a right surround, slightly behind the listening area, that allow you to have sounds that will now traverse either catty corner across the room, down the side of the room, or across the back of the room, so you can have sounds move in and overhead around you. In this particular application, we've got dipole surrounds from Atlantic that actually help enhance that spread that the surrounds are supposed to do, to sort of delocalize. That way you can't necessarily pinpoint and say, there's where the sound is coming from. It's more a global, there's where the sound is coming from, which is what you'd expect in a full-blown movie theater.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is the idea of a way to implement an immersive sound system using 5 speakers. Now, the .1 is the ever important subwoofer.
There you go.
Yeah, and this particular setup, this thing is crazy. So it's a double 12, both active, ported box, and this thing
at 1,000 watts.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it digs down deep, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I was really surprised. So when Gabe came in, sat down, and we were talking about it, I said, man, I might need to turn this up a little bit, and I don't know if it's going to be enough. But when we got into the content,
it changed.
Yeah, it's really delivering. I mean, this thing is putting out bass and it's putting out low. And, it's hard to tell exactly how strong it is at that low end, but I'm going to pull out REW and I'm going to go over some measurements with you so you can see exactly what the curve looks like in room. So that's pretty exciting. I think maybe for the next step, let's go ahead and I'm going to pull some measurements off these speakers, and we'll talk about that a bit so you can see exactly what the frequency response looks like in room for each of the different pieces. let's kick things off with the towers. So first off, everything is pretty linear. There's a 5 decibel gap between each of these lines. So, we're staying within 10 decibels. And remember, this is in my room and I'm measuring at the main listening position. So these things are far away. This is not any type of near field. So you're getting a lot of room interaction here. And you can see that, getting a little room gain here at 70, and then things start to fall off. Now, I would say that if you follow this across, this is likely where it's really falling off at, and that's 50.8 hertz, and that matches up really well with what the specifications have listed, which is 50 hertz. So they're right on the money there. And other than a few minor tweaks, you might want to pull down a couple of these humps. You could take this guy here at 732 hertz down 5 if you wanted to, and maybe this if you wanted to, and if you wanted to, you could play with that as well, this is probably the one that you want to deal with to make it really, really smooth. But this is a great flat curve for the towers, and they meet the specifications as far as the bass extension. Now we'll move over to the center channel. This again was measured at the main listening position, and let's center up on this thing. It's super linear. A little dump down here at 400, then probably room gain, playing with everything from 65 up to, that's 322. Now it does look like they, start tapering off here in the, the mid 60s, and I think they're rated down to 50. But after they drop this 5 decibels, this thing goes kind of flat all the way down to 30 hertz. So, if you pull this big hump down, I think you're going to be right on par with these. They look good. Moving on to the surrounds, not a lot to talk about here. I think they were rated down to 80, which would put them somewhere in this range. For me, they started falling off a little bit higher than that. But, this could be right in the zone where the room is doing weird things. Other than that, not a lot to remark about on the surrounds. Now we are into the subwoofer, and this is the dual 12 unit. It looks like I got a little bit of room interaction going on here, around 60 again. I always see this in the room. And then they start a slow drop off around 30, and this is a sealed subwoofer, so this is the normal kind of drop off that you expect to see on that. It's not sharp like you'd see with a ported subwoofer, which is really, really nice. And getting down to 20, which is what they're rated to when you have extension on, if you were to pull down this hump and a hump over here, I think you could get that really, really flat all the way down to 20, and then have it start trending off down to 10 after that, which meets up with the specifications. Like I said, this subwoofer gets plenty loud, sounded nice and clean, good full bass, everything you could ask for from a subwoofer.
All right, so one of the cool things about Atlantic is they've been around for over 30 years. This is one of the original home theater companies when it came to home theater systems and home theater speakers. And they have stuck with a lot of the same designs for years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't try something new. What made these unique was that they were able to do a complete computer-aided design from ground up. And because they build their own drivers, they were fully aware of how the system was going to behave before they ever even built a cabinet. So they were able to R&D this with such precision that they knew exactly what they were going to wind up building. And it's a very unique jump for them, so it makes for a great speaker.
Yeah, so one thing that is very interesting for me about Atlantic Technology is that it's a brand that you don't hear people talk about a lot. Now, I would always see them at the shows, CD and that kind of thing. And, this is actually my first experience with them in my home. But, I think they're kind of in the background doing a lot of home builder kind of things, as opposed to I'm going to be out in Best Buy. But don't let that fool you, because these guys, like you said, have been around a long time, and their technology is really, really good. And the sound that comes out of these speakers is amazing. So we watched some movie clips and we listened to Hans Zimmer, right?
Yeah.
And so for folks that haven't really dug into that yet, Hans Zimmer is the composer that's done a lot of different theme music for movies. And for me, what's really cool is this music is extremely compelling. It's good stuff, but it's mixed for a surround sound environment, right? So if you watch the Blu-ray Hans Zimmer Live in Prague, you get to hear the music in, it's kind of like a stadium environment.
It's a massive auditorium.
Yeah, it's humongous. So it's things that you're familiar with movies, and it's specifically designed and mixed for multi-channel environments. So you get all the goodness of music and mix that in with all the goodness of the cool gear that you got in your theater. And let me tell you, I mean, it just sounded amazing in here, and the dynamics are huge, but also the frequency range of the music, I mean, it goes all the way down. And this is kind of odd, but one of the ways that I know that a movie's really got some low bass information is that I have a doorknob that when you get down to 15, 16, 17 hertz, it goes off. And so that's my, guess what? This thing's really going off. And so, we sat and listened to that, and it was amazing. Great transients. And one thing is that I feel like these speakers are really transparent. And by transparent, I mean, you're hearing the music and not the speaker, right?
Right. And that's one thing that we noted was even in the layout that we've got, the way it's set up, you couldn't really didn't sound like they were coming from a speaker. They sounded like they were coming from an area of the room. So
exactly,
things were coming from the right, things were coming from the left, but coupled with the center, we had a complete wall of sound. We had a sound stage that had no holes in it whatsoever.
And that expanded all the way around.
Right. In the complete surround and the Hans Zimmer mix was unbelievable because we were in that auditorium with an audience hearing the music being played on stage. And it's really an immersive and enveloping thing. But yeah, to your point, the speakers don't add anything that's their own to that mix. There's nothing in there that points out and says, can you hear me scream? Can you hear how edgy my tweeter is? Can you hear, my chesty bass response? Like, there was nothing in there that pointed to that. They're really just clear. You're hearing what you're hearing.
Yep. So, another thing that I want to touch on, and this is something maybe the Atlantic Technology folks can take to heart, is that, when we've looked at the form factor of the speakers in this speaker line, this is definitely a set of speakers for folks that want to see the speakers.
And they're pretty.
They look awesome. The design of the towers is particularly interesting to me because they're all sealed.
Yes.
There's no port on those towers at all. So it lets them be very small, and they are tiny for a tower with that many drivers that can put out that kind of sound.
Right.
And being sealed is all part of that. I really like it. Now, one thing I would like to see though is an in-wall version of these.
I think it would be brilliant. And they've just got a new line that they've released that are architectural drivers that match the build and tweeter of these towers. So if you want to do some in-ceilings, you can get some Atmos and some surrounds that will match these for a complete hidden system. But these guys still have a big footprint and have to be out in the room.
Absolutely.
So an architectural counterpart that might be able to sink into the wall that could get that performance, I think that would give them a very broad category.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. So, after we watched the movie stuff, then we moved over to a little bit of Roon, and I love Roon, and I've been working to integrate Roon into my home theater system, right? So some people are like, oh, don't do 2-channel music in your home theater, but no, you can totally do it these days. If you got the right gear, it sounds amazing, and tell you what, it sounds amazing in here. So we listened to a lot of electronica today as the test for these speakers, and in particular, Daft Punk.
Yeah.
And so what was the album that you had us listen to?
Alive 2007 is probably their most famous live album, and it is a brilliant mix and so much energy, and you're part of that audience. You can hear the audience just building up as the songs build and peak out and really just grab you. So we played a couple of tracks from that, and we were in a 2-channel mix. We were in that audience. It was an amazing thing to listen to.
It was so good because the sound just comes and washes over you, and their music has a ton of bass in it. So,
and it's aggressive.
Yeah, and so we had the SBT 1000 doing its thing, and I mean those 12s were just they were rocking, and my doorbell went off on the door handle. So I knew that this music was doing something. And if you go back to the Hans Zimmer, if you like low frequency information in music, I mean, this has got it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one to listen to. I strongly recommend anybody to pick up that Blu-ray or pick it up on Kaleidoscape or whatever their source device of choice is, because it's really, really, really good. Now, I think at this point, we'll go ahead and move on to our final thoughts. I'll do the good and the bad, because nothing's perfect, right? So on the good side, wonderful sound quality. The 5.1 system gives you great response all the way from the bottom to the top, and as that it's 5.1 with the surrounds that are very, very dispersed, you get great envelopment from the system, and you know, it's just 6 speakers, right? So it's doing a really great job. The bad, there's no architectural version of these, so you can't hide them if you don't want to have speakers out in your room. This is definitely they're gonna be in your face and you're gonna see them, because they're not tiny pieces, but they look very, very, very good. You know, I guess to go back to the good, you can change boundary settings on the back of the speaker, and there's also a setting that I find interesting that helps with the reverberation in the room, depending on how well damped your room is. So that's kind of cool, and that's a feature that you don't see in a lot of speakers. I mean, really, you have to be high end to get into that kind of stuff. And I guess the last thing on the not perfect side is, I think I would need to tone these down just a little bit, like maybe 1 or 2 decibel at the very top end, because they get a little too aggressive for me. And I think this is just purely personal preference, but that's the only negative comment that I have on the sound quality. But that is something that you can fix in DSP really easily.
Yeah, and I would say for me, the pros again, the music quality is phenomenal. I've had the system for 6 months now. Lots of 2-channel listening, lots of LPs, lots of streaming music, Tidal, any of the stuff that I can get my hands on, CDs. And then as well as movie playback, and we're able to demonstrate the system to a number of people. Even though it's a flagship system, it gives them an idea not only about the brand, but also about the potential about what they could do in a normal environment, a standard family room. Even with something as big as these, which again, back to the negative side, they're a little big, but there's an audience for that. And when you consider even the step down models that Atlantic has, they're not much smaller. So you're really in a footprint that tends to have a lot of accessibility. There's a lot of market in that size. So I don't think that they've stepped out of anybody's periphery in terms of like doing something that no one else is doing with the size factor. But I agree with you. Something that you could totally hide a little more efficiently might also add to that mix.
Yeah, it'd be a good additional item to have in the portfolio.
Yeah.
Now, the room that these speakers are in now, in the listening area, it's about 14.5 foot by 14.5 foot. Yeah, I know it's a square, it's not the best. But this is a good example of a smaller space, because this isn't huge, that you can have really amazing sound from with a 5.1 system. It sounds really great in here. All right, so that is our quick look at the Atlantic Technology 8600 series speakers. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like and subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be notified when new content drops. And if you've had a chance to use something like this in the past, let us know. Drop a comment down below and let us know what you think about these speakers, because I'm always interested in what others think as well. So thanks so much for watching.
Thanks, guys.
And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.